Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our Alumni Speaker Series. This is the second one that we've done in person and hybrid. So thank you to all of those who are on Zoom. We are getting started. I am Shauna Lawson. I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations and Annual Giving at UW Tacoma. And I do want to start with the Share the Land acknowledgement, and then I will introduce our speaker and our MC or interviewer for the night. So we will start with the Share the Land acknowledgement. Let me do that. This is a new experience for us doing the hybrid, so please bear with me. So we recognize that all of us at UW Tacoma learn, live, and work on or near the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people. In particular, we are situated on the traditional territory of the Puyallup. As people on this occupied territory, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the land, the ancestors who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and all our indigenous connections today. We also have the responsibility to acknowledge the histories of dispossession and forced removal that have allowed for the growth and survival of this institution. In light of this history, let us take active efforts to partner with our indigenous community members and neighbors as we continue our work together as a community of learners, leaders, and educators. After the interview, if there is time, we will take questions via the chat on Zoom, but we will also take questions in the room here. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties on Zoom, please send a message and we will try to assist you. I'll now turn this over to our interviewer, Jay Sean Berry, our student from the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences. His focus is communications, and he is our president of the Associated Students of University of Washington, Tacoma. Thank you, Jay Sean.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you all so much for coming, for those of you that came in person and those of you that came over Zoom. My name is Jay Sean. I use he, him pronouns. I am a current senior pursuing a major in communications, and this is my last year. That is not what I wanted to say, but I am the ASUWT president. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Make sure my mic's on. Yes, I will go ahead and introduce myself. So I am Nadia Caldwell. I am a UWT grad of 2016. It feels like it's almost a decade ago. We're closing in, but yes. So UWT grad from the Bachelor's in Communications program. I am currently an account supervisor at a communications firm called GMMB. And I specialize in issue-driven communications, but you'll learn more about that throughout the interview. So I think that's the gist, right? Yeah. Okay, yes. Good.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start off with the questions. So first question, what made you choose the line of work that you're in?
Gosh, okay, that is a deep question. It's a multifaceted answer, but I'll kind of try to hone in on it. There's one story that really sums up what got me into communication studies. So I had graduated from high school in 2006, forever ago. And when I graduated, I was like, okay, I want to go to college, but I didn't want to go too far away from home. I wanted to stay close to my family. We're very close. And so I was like, oh, UWT, like that's right in the heart of my city because I'm Tacoma born and raised. And so I was like, oh, let me apply there. Well, at that time, I wanted to go into nursing. And at that time, UWT didn't have a nursing program. So I transferred to Tacoma Community College. By the way, I took time off, was a preschool teacher at a learning center, did a lot of different things. And finally, I decided I wanted to return to school to finish my degree. And I had a conversation with my lovely mother. She'll probably be spoken of a lot throughout my answers, but as a guiding force in my life. But I spoke with my mom and she's like, you're going back to school. Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, maybe I want my own business someday. Like maybe, I could do that. And she was like, Nadia, you're not good at math. and I'm like, well, Mom, you're right. Right. And she said, okay, let's just put that on the side. Let's put that, over in a corner. And she said, what do you like to do? What activities, what things make you happy? And I was like, I love people. I love being around people, talking to people, events with people. I like writing too, And she said, well, that sounds like communications. And at that time, I was like, okay, I've kind of heard of communications, but didn't really understand what it meant. And so I was like, what is that? And she went on and she was like, you know what? Any field you want to go into, any area of work that you could consider, they have a communications department. That's job security. And so from there, I was like, well, job security sounds great. If I'm going back to school, let's do it. And then I came to UWT, fell in love with communications, then fell in love with PR. And that's how I got here today. So.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned your family, and you do have a few family members here. So I just want to ask, how has coming to UWT and pursuing an education benefited not only you, but also your family?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I lean on now and point to when it comes to getting your education and how that circles back in your family is becoming a resource. So, and also building up your community, right? So I always tell this story, my first quarter at UWT was actually my mom's last quarter at UWT because she was a returning student. And so when I came here, she showed me the mattress factory, showed me where I could print, like took me all around, right? She finished up her program and went on, and then I finished up my program and went on. And now as professionals, we are resources to each other to help walk through any challenges, to understand complex ideas, because her area of expertise is different than my area of expertise. And we build up our family together and we can work together to grow and develop, as well as my sisters. One's an attorney, one's a principal. We all have these separate skill sets that make kind of like the dream team all together. And so when you get your education, the biggest benefit to your family is you're adding another source of knowledge, you're adding a resource, a thought partner, and just so much benefit. And so that's the main benefit in our family, I think, for me.
Yeah, thank you. So I like how you touched on the writing center. So I also wanted to ask, for the students that are in our audience, what resources did you utilize while here at UWT?
Oh my goodness, I used everything. Oh my goodness, I literally was all over this place while I was here at UWT, and engaged in so many different aspects. I think one that I like to think back to that really was an engaging resource and I lean into as a professional was actually my work with the Center for Service and Leadership. We did a lot of like volunteer work and engagement out in the community, but we also went through leadership development. And I mean, that was like the first time I climbed a rock wall and I felt so empowered once I got up the wall at UWT. I mean, UW, the Y, you know what I mean. Goodness, all the U's. But yeah, so I mean, the Center for Service and Leadership had a really big impact on me in terms of thinking of myself as a leader, but also a servant leader, right? And how do you give back to community, but also guide community and engage and build that from there. So that was one resource that I really engaged with. I could go on because there's so many that I touched on here, but that does stick with me.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. So this is the second time that I've heard you mention community, which here at UWT, we are big on. So how did you go about building your community here at UWT?
Yeah, no, that is a big thing. And I think one of the biggest takeaways of my time at UWT was the focus on community and culture building as well. But how I went about building my community, I got a leg up, a head start, because my mom was here to show me around, right? And so I kind of already felt like, yeah, I'm here. I remember one day I was going and getting my lunch at the WCG building, and I like walk out and my mom's at a table talking to another student about one of their classes. And I was like, what are you doing? Oh yeah, you go here too. Okay. I had to like remind myself, but so I had a leg into community, but also all of the available resources and extracurricular activities you can do on campus. So when I was here, it wasn't just like do your work and go home, right? I got to engage in a variety of different things. Like I mentioned the Center for Service and Leadership. I wrote for the Ledger for a time. I had a stint in student government as well. The Giving Garden that's up on 21st Street, I was actually a part of the cohort that put in the plant beds that are up there today. So I engaged on all of the opportunities that were available to kind of get involved. I ended up working in the School of Interdisciplinary Arts and Sciences as an office assistant and got to work closely with the staff up there that really have so many moving parts behind the scenes that students, when you're coming to class and you're doing your thing and extracurriculars, you never think really about like, how is this all getting done? Who's wrangling all of this? And the staff do a lot of really amazing work. And so that experience there built a really strong community. I'm still close and speak with on social media staff members from SIAS back when I was here. But I went and I took every opportunity and I just said yes and went for it. And that's how I built my community here. Yeah.
All right. Well, main takeaway, just say yes to all the opportunities that you have. So moving on, I also want to sort of touch on something that you did mention is, keeping in touch with the staff that you met at SIAS. So who were some staff or faculty who had a big impact on your trajectory here at UWT?
Oh my gosh, there's so many hands that are involved in the process of getting even just one student through this place. And so just to acknowledge that I couldn't even touch on all of them, right? But I will say one big part, as you know, as being in the comms program, the comms faculty was amazing. I mean, Dr. Ellen Moore, Chris Damaski, Alex Smith, all of them were quintessential to teaching me the foundations of communication so that I could take that forward and develop more and become the professional that I am today. But not even just the comms faculty. Like I was talking to you earlier about Ingrid Walker and the American Studies program and how my vision of the world was like just so shaped in some of the courses I took with her. And one key, which is so funny because it's not, necessarily the full-time faculty that can have an impact here. I took a class, a writing for PR class. It was an evening class with this guy named Troy Brown who commuted from his regular job and just taught a course, a couple nights a week. And that's where I found my love for public relations and realized that's exactly what I wanted to be doing, where I could use my communication skills to speak on behalf of the things that I believe in and help to create behavior change. And so Troy was quintessential. I actually came back and spoke in his class a couple of times some years back. But so there's that. And then as I mentioned, the staff, I mean, when I went away to grad school, the SIAS staff had this care package for me. And I remember Jessica Asplin, she had this pillow that she got me and it had the longitude and latitude of Tacoma written on it. And she said, we're giving this to you so that you'd never forget where you came from, right? And I remember being down in LA. It was like, I've been in Tacoma my whole entire life. So born and raised here, had never left. First time really away from home. And I'm like, where's my mom? I want to go home. But I had that pill. And I remember so many nights in LA just being like, never forget, Nadia, you know where you come from. But it was just so those really special moments of feeling like even the staff really cared about me as a person. It just was all encompassing into the community and helped get me along, right? You need all of that support team to get you through and get you to keep going. So
yeah, that's amazing. So going a bit further back, you did touch on something else that I wanted to talk about. And I've talked about a lot about your experience here at UWT, but I want to talk about how did you translate your experience here at UWT into your professional life?
Yeah, I think if you've talked with anyone who's worked with me in a professional setting, they'd be like, oh yeah, she's talking about it, that community. Like she's all about the people, right? Building the community, building culture, being a light into the rooms that you step into, right? So that you add value, not just in your skills, but in the feeling and the environment and the culture wherever you're at. And I think that's definitely something that I got from being at UWT. It was like, I felt good walking into rooms on this campus. Like I enjoyed it. I was excited and passionate about that. And I knew going out into the professional world, I want to be a person that creates that environment for other people as well, right? I want people to walk in a room and be like, Nadia's there. Oh yeah, like this is the place to be. Not only are we going to get work done and we're going to get it done well, but we're also going to walk away with a smile on our face. And so that is a big part of it. I try to emulate that in my professional space as well.
Thank you. All right. So second to last question. Going back to your time here at UWT, what were some things that you did to sort of help you de-stress and protect your mental health?
Mhm. Well, I'm a big proponent of self-care, bubble baths, face masks, all the things. So self-care is the way to go. Find out what it is for you and do it all the time, whenever you can. No, but while I was here, I mean, having all of those other outlets to engage with were really helpful. And so it's kind of what I just describe now as a professional and not a student is side projects, right? What are you doing outside of your main focus of work and effort, right? That you can go to as a sort of escape, right? I remember when I was at UWT, my mom can tell you, I was mixing music on GarageBand like it was my life. Like it was the only thing I was going to become the next rap singing star, because I would do it all the time, be mixing music and singing at the top of my lungs. And it was my side project, right? But having that outlet outside of just your coursework or your main focus of work. Then, as I've mentioned, and is the through line of everything I'm going to speak about tonight, is that community and that support team, having those people around you that are going to lift you up in your times of need, that are going to be your cheerleaders. It's invaluable to make sure that you have those people around you. So there's support teams, there's side project, and there's self-care. So the 3 S's.
Period. All right. Okay, so last question, and feel free to take some time with this one because this can get a bit tricky.
Okay.
But what is one piece of advice that you would not only give to your past self, but also future students?
Yeah. Okay. Goodness, and my past self as well. I'd probably tell past Nadia, like, it's okay, you're not in a rush, right? Like there's time. Because I threw myself at everything as if like there was no time to do it all, right? And so then you're rushing around, and when you look back, you're like, man, if I only took a little bit more time to enjoy every one of those moments. I was walking around earlier and just looking at the campus and all of the nostalgia, and just I had seen a piece of artwork, and I was like, hey, that was there when I was here, just, and it's like, it's so funny because I probably had walked past that exact painting hundreds of times at least, but it wasn't really until I came back that I stopped and said, oh, wow, I don't even think I really examined it thoroughly, So really taking your time to enjoy the moment while you have it, I think is a good piece of advice, I would say. Also, just say yes, right? You gotta just say yes. Opportunities, some people will say, oh, they're a dime a dozen, they don't always come, but there's going to be more opportunities that come. They always pop up here and there. And as long as you say yes, you're capitalizing on them. So then in the times when they're not there, you at least have that credibility from the times that they were, and everything matters. Everything counts, right? There's things I remember when I first started looking for my first professional jobs. And it was one of those things of like, oh, well, what have I done? What do you put on your resume? What do you, say your skill sets are, right? And there are things from my time on campus that were able to be framed and shaped in a way that added value to my portfolio, you know? So everything that you do on campus matters. Every opportunity carries weight and adds leverage for your trajectory as a professional. So just say yes, build your community, lean in. I think those would be all of them.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm sure you're all tired of hearing my voice, so I'll go ahead and open the room up to you all.
Yeah, do we have any questions? I am
Yes. And people in the
and
Zoom
in the chat
as well.
I have a question. Thinking, Nadia, what is it that you're reading right now?
What?
Something that you're reading right now.
Oh gosh, I'm not going to proselytize, but I'm reading the Bible. No, I'm sorry. Oh, always reading that. So that's a big thing. Okay, I will say I've been working on, and so some people that might be on the Zoom might think that I've already read this. I'm going to give myself away right now. I've read parts of it, but I've been working on the 4 agreements for probably a year now. I just want to highlight everything. Like, and so yeah, I got to reread a chapter. I'm sorry, anyone I gave the impression that I've read the whole thing, but I am reading that too. I find that like as you get into the professional world, I used to read a lot of like fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, love that type of stuff. But now I read a lot of self-help and development as a professional, because what you're going to find is it's important to continue to try to grow yourself, right? You can get so honed in and focused on your professional line of work that you forget that there's other aspects that you can develop in. And so I read a lot of different self-help books as well. Welcome.
What was the one thing that you did on campus to make your mark?
Goodness, that's a good question. Thank you, Wyatt Fernhill. Let's see. My gosh, as I told you all, I did a lot of things across campus. Gosh, geez Louise, from student government to writing for the Ledger. My mom actually has so many laminated articles that I wrote for the Ledger to keep them there, like rolled up all nicely in, you know, a little container to keep track of all the stories that I wrote. I still have done a lot of creative writing speaking with folks from Tacoma West and Creative Colloquy. And so there's that. But I think if you ask anyone who was my peer during my time, my biggest mark at UWT was probably the music video I made. She screams, yes, that was it. That was it. It was probably the music video I made to get elected to student government. Yes. And so I had only been on campus because I was a transfer student. I'd only been on campus for about 2 months. And I was like, I want to do everything. There's an opportunity. I'm taking it. So I ran for student government. And I was like, people don't know who I am. I've only been here a couple of months. And I remember one day I was driving up 19th Street Hill and I was like talking to myself and I was like, they don't know who I am. But you know, I'm in the science building. I'm in Dugan. I'm in Walsh Gardner. I'm at Metro and at the TLB. I was like listing them all off. And as I told you, I had been mixing music all the time back those days. So I went home and I wrote the heck out of that rap and I put it to music. I had some friends in the film department that were like, let's shoot this on camera. And somewhere in the abyss of the internet is a music video of me walking around campus talking about, I'm in that science building. I'm in Dugan. I'm in Walsh Gardner. So I think that if you ask any of my peers, that was my biggest mark on campus. Next question. Oh yeah, okay. So I was asked what my long-term aspirations are. Well, I'll preface this. I'm an Aquarius. So if you know anything about astrology, that just basically means I really love going with the flow. And I've always been a person that's been not necessarily opposed to goal setting, but it felt restrictive to me, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, you put these goals in place and now what do you do from there, right? But so when I think about my long-term aspirations, I fell in love with communications from my time at UWT and then going on to grad school, falling in love in public relations, and then finding my niche in, issue-driven communications, doing my work, but for good causes, creating real and lasting change out there in the world, right? And so that's been my passion, and it kind of guides my long-term aspirations, which is more of an idea. I hope that in my lifetime, maybe not the near future, but in the future, I'm able to create spaces, create an organization that can allow for common ground, right? Where we can build community and we can build understanding across the lines like we've seen in our world right now. It's so divisive out there. Right? People do not hear one another when they're speaking, about their opinions, about their beliefs. And I'm a firm believer that like everybody can get on the side of another person if you just frame it right. As we learn in communications, framing is everything, right? How you communicate about something is quintessential. In my grad program, I wrote my thesis on how I proposed that social movements, right? Like the March on Wall Street or Black Lives Matter or any of these social movements would have a longevity much longer than what they see if they had strategic public relations as a part of the makeup of their organizations and of their movement, right? If we are strategic and thoughtful about the way we go into planning our activities or planning how we want to explain our opinions, our thoughts, and our beliefs, we're going to be more likely to get people on our side. So to sum up, my long-term aspirations is to be a common ground builder, to find a way to leverage communication and my skill set as a way to bring people together and to build empathy. So more of an idea than a tangible goal, but that's what I shoot for.
There is a question from Wyatt Fernhill that links to the same question you just answered, but they're being pretty specific. So they ask, when you think of Nadia, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
When I think of Nadia, I told you Wyatt Fernhill. I know this person, I promise you. So Wyatt Fernhill. I think of it as ideas. I know that in 5 years from now, Nadia will be still working in public relations, creating positive impact in the world, has a stack underneath her belt of accomplishments that create a good change for people, right? What does that look like? It is to be written, right? Because you just say yes. So whatever opportunity comes, whatever approach it is, I know that I'll be able to look over the last 5 years, but looking ahead and saying, wow, I did everything I could to create good change in the world. So, but I keep the door open, right? Because you never really know what's going to happen. You just got to be open to it and go with the flow.
If there's any questions from the floor, I can bring the microphone to you. Anybody have questions?
So I have a friend who has spent his life trying to get more people of color into public relations. And he actually has a foundation and is going to, have you heard about this? He's going to be bringing some folks together. But he's very specific. He says, he was out, he got his public relations credential, went out, he was by himself. So what's been your experience? Are there a number of people of color that you run into in the field? Or if not, what can we do to improve that?
Yeah, that is a great question. I've worked at a variety of public relations agencies, right? So because when you think about PR, just for like students, there's agency space, right, where we consult on public relations with a broad variety of clients. And then there's like public relations, public affairs within organizations, and you could go that path too. I've mostly specialized in the agency space, so doing consulting for a broad variety of clients. And in that space, I will tell you, at all of the agencies that I've been at, I've probably been one of a handful of Black folks there at that agency. And maybe the only one. I will say that when you go bigger, like the firm that I'm at now, there's more, there's a lot more of us, but like in my particular office, I'm like one of two, I believe, right? So it's one thing that I will say for us here in Tacoma and the Pacific Northwest. So for folks that might not be in Washington, this is very specific, but in the Pacific Northwest, we're a lower percentage in general, us Black folks. And so the reasoning around why you don't see as much hiring is, how do you find, Black PR pros in Washington, right? That's what the companies are going to say. I say that there is an onus to reach into those communities. In terms of what I think us as Black folks can do is just making sure that we're showing up in those spaces, that we are helping one another up, right? Sharing those opportunities, right? Because that's all you can do. I mean, that's why networking is so important, right? Why community building is so important is because somebody's going to get me into a door, and then I can get my sister or my brother into the door as well. And so we as a community, our work that we can do is to continue to share with each other opportunities and to open doors for one another. I think in terms of public relations agencies, I think they've got to be really intentional about seeking out those places. There's, urban leagues, there's a lot of different, you run the one student organization, the Men of Color, right? Exactly, right? There's student organizations with students of color that would love to get, into PR, right? PR is awesome. You're changing behaviors, right? Like you can tell people yellow is like not a great color anymore. We should just be purple. And if you say it the right way, no, I'm serious. If you say it the right way, people might buy on. So PR is amazing. And we should be in those spaces because a lot of times, especially in the work that I do, our audience, the people that we're speaking to are people of color, people from marginalized communities, right? And so we need to have those voices in the room to accurately message to those people to make sure that we're meeting their needs. So everybody has a role in getting more color in public relations. We just all have to keep pushing forward and doing it. No problem. More questions?
From Lisa Curiel Parker. How did your undergraduate career compare to your graduate one?
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so that is a big question because I know a lot of students, when I've talked to students or folks that have their bachelor's degree, they often ask like, oh, was it worth it to go get your master's degree? Like, should you even do it? It's often a question that's asked. And I say, heck yes, if you know exactly what you want to be doing. So what was different between my undergraduate career and my master's program is at UWT, I was also in a state of finding myself, right? While I was on the campus, I was exploring and getting to know what things I really was passionate about, what things I cared about. I was meeting new kinds of people and engaging and really developing. And then when I got into my master's program, it was like, I know what I want to be doing. So you all are here to tell me how to do it. And they were about it, they were really down to show me the ins and outs of public relations and guide me and help develop that. I think in terms of my professional career, a lot of what I learned in my grad program is a lot of what I use in my day-to-day work because it was very targeted and focused. But the community, the thoughts, the ideals that were in my undergrad fuel my spirit forward. So they work in tandem, if I have to say, between my BA and my master's.
Question from Z. Koletka.
Another question?
What are you proudest of since graduating?
What am I proudest of since graduating? Well, as I told you guys, I'm not really big on individual goals. Every accomplishment really matters to me because it wasn't like I was necessarily planning for that goal, right? It was like this opportunity came up. It felt right. I went for it. And since I achieved it, it's such a big deal, right? So from finally finishing my bachelor's, so I told you I went to community college, and I went on and off for almost a decade before I decided to return to school. I used to say when I got to grad school, is like, I have that underdog story, right? The girl that wasn't ready for college right after high school, dabbled back and forth with college, finally went back, excelled, and then went on to go to grad school with a full ride scholarship. Like, that was a huge achievement. Then going to grad school and taking that community feeling that I had at UWT and bringing it to a whole new campus. And I was telling you, I was a radio host, and I was working 3 jobs at any given time that sometimes they were volunteer gigs because it was an opportunity. Just say yes, right? So I was doing everything there. And then I ended up graduating from my master's programs with honors. I was inducted into this thing that USC calls the Order of Arete. It's the highest honor bestowed to grad students. And so I excelled. So there's not one thing I can point to as like the proudest moment. I'm proudest of my perseverance, endurance, and continued drive to do whatever comes onto my plate. You bring it here, I'm going to shoot for it. I'm going to do it. And I'm proud of that. And so, yeah, there we go.
The floor. Are you sure?
Thank you.
So I'm curious about your current day-to-day. So issue-driven communications, what does that look like? What does that look like in an agency? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, definitely. This is a question that I will say, as communications people, you're going to always get asked about your work. It's like, what is it that you do? Right? And we're like, even though it's communications, I should be able to tell you, I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this, but I've got you. I've been practicing. So, I say issue-driven communication. Some people will say issue advocacy, public relations, right? But basically, it's communications work in support of a cause, right? So in the agency space, which is where I'm at, we have a variety of clients that are doing really good work out there in the world. So I work with nonprofits, major philanthropies or foundations, and I support their communications on the good work that they do. So let's say they're doing awesome grant making in education spaces. Let's say that they're, doing some kind of programming in schools, after school programs or things like that. Maybe they're doing really cool research to find out what helps students succeed. I go and support their communications. So in terms of public relations or communications, right? We got press releases, we got media advisories, we got media lists, lots of media relations, talking to those reporters. It's not that easy, but all of those kinds of work, a lot of writing. Sometimes there's technical writing, just all of those. There's a lot of strategizing at the point where I am at now and moving into more doing strategic planning and project management support. So my clients will have these major campaigns that they're doing and they need communication support around, how do we keep this moving? What are the next things that we should be doing? And so all of those type of things. So that's kind of what like the day-to-day life of a issue-driven communications consultant does. Lots of writing, lots of thinking, lots of strategizing. But for me, specifically in issue-driven communications, it's for good causes. Like my firm, the kind of slogan is creating real and lasting change in the world, right? Or causing the effect, right? It's about helping to make the world a better place. And so we support clients that are doing work in communities out there, have the research, and they're going to make a really good impact. And by proxy, we get to share in that goodwill. Yeah. Okay, so just in case, I don't know if anybody heard, but what are some challenges that someone could face working in public relations and in that field? Goodness, challenges. It's tough, right? I don't think, I mean, maybe this is my own like biasy or, my own stigma but I don't think people really understand the importance of communications, right? And how critical it is for organizations and companies out there in the world to have solid communication support. So one challenge is crisis, right? I didn't go into crisis communications because I don't have time for all of that stress, I like to keep it positive here, okay? So good work, good things, peace and love. But no, so there's crisis communications, right? I think one thing with issue-driven communications that can be a challenge, right, is when you're doing it at an agency, you've got a broad variety of clients, right? And I'm not the founder of the agency, so I don't pick who they decide to have clients as, right? So you could come up with challenges of, they signed on this new client who's doing this good work, but you don't know if you necessarily agree if they're the best. But as in the agency space and consulting, we work on our clients' work, right? And so that could be a challenge. I have not had to face that myself, but that is something that could be a challenge. I think too, one thing in terms for like students to think about like the professional world, is time management, especially in PR. So I had a mentor at one of my old firms, and I had sent an email to a reporter, and I think I had left off a period in a sentence or something like that. And I'm gonna tell you all, I started crying. I was bawling. I was like, they're gonna think I'm so not smart. I left off that period. It was just, that email is hideous. They're just never going to pick up this story. It's just horrible, And so I had a meltdown, and this mentor, she takes me over into a conference room, and she goes, Nadia, and I go, yes, and she's like, it is PR, not ER. And I was like, ooh, I like that, right? So I think one challenge that can happen in public relations, because communications is so critical to the lifeline of a lot of organizations, everything feels like a fire. It is a rapid pace. It is go, go, go. This could be a crisis. Because we're thinking of all of the things that could be taken the wrong way, especially in the day and age that we live in with social media and, all of the different facets that stories can get out there. We're always going. So one challenge is okay, where is the actual fire and where is the not fire? How do you time manage? And I think that is something that being a student can help you with, is you're prioritizing as something you're going to always be working on, especially as a communications professional, is where's the fire? What else can be moved lower in the list? So that's a challenge too. But I think those are it. Yes. Oh, sorry, Shauna, I took your job. I got excited.
Always a fan.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I do have a question. You did speak about the class that you said was the starting point for, I know PR is my thing. Do you remember the exact project and what it was and how you felt completing that first project, knowing this is my thing?
Thank you. Yeah, I can actually speak to that. I'll preface, it wasn't actually a project. I hadn't done any work in the class yet. There was no assignments at all yet. It was actually a reading. And so beginning class, I'm writing for PR, that sounds fancy. Let's see what this is about. And we were reading this fundamentals of public relations book. And we were talking about Edward Bernays, who's the grandfather of public relations, of modern day public relations. And this is going to sound horrible, so bear with me. But we were reading about how he had used public relations or leverage marketing to get women to start smoking cigarettes back in the day, because it was particularly a male habit or a male behavior. Women weren't smoking cigarettes, and he used strategic marketing and public relations to build this culture where women would want to smoke, and then women started picking up cigarettes. I told you this would sound really horrible. So that's the bit that's horrible, that he got all these women smoking cigarettes. But when I read that story, I just had this moment of like, oh, you can use communications to change people's behavior. And now I mentioned I worked at the Ledger, the student-run newspaper, when I first came out on campus, and I was writing, I was going to events and kind of reporting on what was going on. And in news media, we know it's like, oh, you got to be so objective, like just say the facts and say it straight. You don't put in any opinion or, that kind of thing in there. And it was fine and dandy, but I was writing for the Ledger and I realized I want to write on behalf of something. I want to write on behalf of an idea. I want my opinion to be out there. I want to tell a story that I believe in. Now, I did not believe in Edward Bernays' story about cigarettes. I mean, I would have probably advised him other tracks there. I mean, but the client got to make him happy. But it did spark this fire in me to say, if he can get all those women smoking cigarettes, then I really believe I can get people to listen to each other. I really believe that I can get people to have empathy for one another as long as I do the communications right, like he did. And so that's what sparked it. But it was a reading, not an assignment yet. The assignments after, luckily enough, he got me, Troy Brown, the professor of that course, he got me in the first reading for the class, and it was PR from then on. Another question?
Questions for people in the Zoom? There are some, you probably saw some comments in there. They wanted you to sing the whole rap song.
Are you guys, who specifically asked for me to Wyatt Fernhill? Oh gosh, if I could remember it. I mean, I did remember that first part now. No, it's wait, actually, okay, let me think. Okay, I'll try. I'll get as far as I can. So I'm in that science building. I'm in Dugan. I'm in Walsh Gardner. I'm at Metro and at the TLB, and I'm getting my lunch from WCG. I'm up in the mat with my homies. And don't forget the DRC with bronies. What? But where I'm really at is at the UWT, just trying to make a difference for you and me. So when it's time to vote, don't forget my rhymes, just showing you I'll put in all my time to be informed on you and involved with you, just trying to, oh, Sophie, you know the rest of this. My name is Nadia. Okay, we'll just skip that last line. It ended with, my name is Nadia, and I'm here for you. Just remember that outreach is what I do. We're out. Thank you.
With that,
I lost the one line there somewhere, but I was running for director of outreach position. There you go. So yeah, so that was it. You're welcome. She's not gonna let me live this down that she got me to do that. Yes, just say yes. Exactly, just say yes.
so with that, if there are no other questions, I'm gonna bring it to the floor once more. Bring it to the Zoom once more. I think we ended on a happy note there. Thank you.
Yeah, so
Thank you, Nadia.
came
So
in
you're
for an
welcome.
interview,
Thank you, Jay
left with this
Sean.
concert.
Yes, and the concert you had.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody should have screen recorded that. That would be
Right.
worth money one day. I just say yes. So in the room they recorded. So, but no, thank you. Thank you. It's been my pleasure to come back and talk to you all about what I've been doing and how important UWT was in my life, is in my life, and will continue to be in my life. So thank you.
All right. So some of the important takeaways from tonight: just say yes. Open doors when doors are open for you, and the importance of the 3 S's.
Yes. Support team.
Right.
Yes.
So I'll just go ahead and turn it back over to Shanna.
Thank you, Jay Sean, and thank you, Nadia. And thank you to everyone who joined us on Zoom. Thank you to everybody in the room. I do have some information. Save the date for November the 10th. We will be hosting our next alumni speaker series. And it will be Shakima Toze, an alum from the School of Social Work. You don't want to miss that. It's also Veterans Day week on campus. So there will be some things happening on campus you might want to come down and see us for. So we also have Tacoma Husky Landing, which is our networking platform. I do have a QR code in the back that people can scan. Alumni and students should be on there. We will be doing Huskies at Work, which is a mentoring program where students can meet with alumni who are working in the fields that they want to work in. You don't want to miss out on that. I will share the Tacoma Husky Landing again to everyone who attended and everyone who registered. So you will receive that again. We did send it by email before. But with that, I'll bid you adieu, and I will say, go dogs.
Go dogs.